problems are, we understand that you can agree with us knowing what the problems are. But may I encourage you, because of our time constraints, to answer the question directly. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your strategies. I know we're all in agreement on the problems, but I want to hear your strategies. Okay? So let's start out with Bishop Roderick Caesar. I would like him to come up. He has a question. He's a senior statesman in from Bethel and from Brooklyn. Don't mess me up. Yeah, he said don't mess him up. He doesn't know where he's from either. Okay, so he has a question for the panel, and the order we're going to do it, this is, speaker just got here. We're going to start with Bill and then work our way down.
I'm a lifetime resident of Queens, New York. I've been in service in that community for the past 41 years. I've noticed a progressive deterioration of relations between the police department and the community, even to the extent that it has become adversarial, it is confrontational, it is combative, and it is very disrespectful. Our young people walk and live in fear. Our parents fear for the lives of their children and don't want their children out at night. Many clergy are disrespected by young, inexperienced officers who only work their shift and go home. They have no consideration for what's going on in our community.
No respect.
We as spiritual leaders in the community have a vested interest. The church that I pastor is 85 years long in the community. We're not going anywhere. When the shift changes, we're still there. When the borough captain changes, we're still there. When the precinct captain changes, we're still in the community. Many leaders in the police department do not reach out to the spiritual leaders that they're there to serve. And as a result, there's no partnership in leading. On one occasion, I had an officer come to me and tell me to go back and do my job. I was in church on Sunday. There was an accident in front of my church. I came out to assist the officer in trying to maintain balance, and he said, I don't need you, get back inside, leave. That's the level of disrespect we have. My question is, how do you propose to address that situation if and when you become the mayor of New York? How do you propose to enrich the relationship between the community and the police department, and particularly the clergy community?
Amen.
Reverend, before we can enrich, we have to heal. And I think a grievous wound has occurred here that only can be solved with a new police commissioner.
Yes.
Deeply committed to a philosophy of police community relations, a positive value of community policing. You know, there are some in this town who like to treat the words community policing as a negative. And I think we have to combat that when we confront it, because it's actually a clear philosophy that says there's only the possibility of long-term security if clergy and other leaders are respected and brought into the policing process. If families are addressed to try and keep young people out of gangs and treated as partners in keeping young people out of gangs. If the police know that there is a value put on respecting civil liberties and respecting each person in the community. By the way, we need that for the long-term self-image of our young people. Not only for the here and now, for the long term we need that. So they can be positive citizens. So new police commissioner. A strong inspector general to provide real oversight. If we had had that, stop and frisk would never have gotten out of control. And a fundamental reform to stop and frisk. It cannot be at the levels that it is today. That is corrosive to the long-term stability and peace of our communities.
Come on, Mr. Stu.
We do need a new police commissioner. We need a new mayor.
Okay.
Let's get it straight. The mayor can tell the police commissioner exactly what to do.
That's right. Say that again.
And the level of disrespect is something that I hear from people on a daily basis about. And I want to thank you for asking the question, Reverend. This is a problem that pervades the city, where the police department now basically, one of the biggest strategies is assume everybody's guilty, assume everybody's bad, so just stop everybody in the street, stop everybody and frisk them. There's no time for questions. And what does that yield? That yields us hundreds of thousands of people being stopped and frisked, almost all of whom have done absolutely nothing wrong. Stop and frisk doesn't need to be reformed, it doesn't need to be mended, it needs to be ended. End the stop and frisk because it is the biggest form of racial profiling going on right now in the country. Alright? And, you know, racial profiling, when you stop people based on the way they look, you're making a value judgment based on the way they look. You know what? It used to be called racism. There's no bringing racism under control. There's no fixing racism. You just have to eradicate racism.
That's right.
And what can we do on the other hand? Instead of spreading the police resources far and thin, assuming everybody's bad, let's have the police work hand in hand with the clergy leaders. You generally know where the bad apples are in the community.
That's right.
Focus the police resources on the bad people, not assuming everybody is bad.
All right, John Woo. Yeah, my man.
Bishop Caesar, let me thank you for your question. And you are 100% correct. The first thing,
I'm good, man.
it does start at the top. The question is, who is the mayor of the city of New York? What are that person's values? Are they going to stand for communities to be treated badly, for communities to be disrespected, for members of the clergy to be ignored, to be told to go back in your church? You're not needed out here. Where I grew up, the clergy was a part of the community, and we need them to be involved in all communities. So first thing, it starts at the top. I've said for years, back to 2009, I believed it was time to bring my police commissioner to the table, my own team. And what I said is, that's not Ray Keller. We need a new police commissioner in the city of New York who will engage in new training, who understands that stop and frisk isn't supposed to be let's stop every young black and Hispanic man in the city of New York and frisk them. There are guidelines, there are constitutional safeguards. They're not being used in the city of New York and not being used correctly. And last but not least, every community in the city of New York is entitled to be safe. What you are seeing across the city of New York, I talked to my friends in Brownsville, they're living behind closed doors again. People in East New York, they're worried. People in other communities across the city of New York, they're concerned. They're worried. Every community in the city of New York is entitled to safety. And as mayor, I'm going to make sure that happens and it's done correctly and working with the clergy of the city of New York.
Amen. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you to our moderators and everyone from Roundtable who's organized tonight, and Williams hosting us. I'm sorry, I had two pre-existing commitments tonight. I couldn't get at it, but thank you for allowing me to come once the event has already begun. Reverend, I first want to say I'm so sorry, because you were doing your job. Being out on the street when there was that accident trying to assist the police is your job. And your assistance should have been embraced, and you should have been thanked for it, and I'm so sorry that happened. But the unfortunate thing is I'm very sure you're not the only person in this room who has a story like that.
That's right.
And so it is not an isolated incident. That is the point.
Every day it happens.
And what we have to do is put reforms in place through a new mayor that will change that. Before I got elected to the city council, I was director of the Crime Victims Assistance Agency, the New York City Gay, Lesbian, and Violence Project. And we had to fight to get relationships and be heard by the police department. And it's unfortunate, but we're going to have to reinstitute some of those models citywide. We need to recognize that clergy, and we saw it during Sandy, you are some of our most important on-the-ground leaders. You should be conducting roll call trainings in the precincts where your churches are on a regular basis. You should be part of the team that's developing the training at the academy, in service, and promotional training, giving us feedback from your congregation about what needs to be in that training. We need to make sure that, yes, in CompStat we're looking at crime statistics, but we're also looking at CCRB complaints and other complaints, and asking for input from the community to be part of that discussion. And we need to put an inspector general in through legislation that will be looking at all kinds of policies and practices. And the public advocate's right, if we'd had one sooner, stop, question, and frisk would not have skyrocketed to 750,000 stops, the vast majority of which almost all of them, yielded no guns. We were stopping people for no reason. That doesn't help us get safer. It tears the city and communities apart, and that puts us at greater danger.
Gone on far too long, far too long. Far too long.